It was my son, Ethan's 38th birthday, and I arrived early with the lemon cake he loves, the same recipe his grandmother taught me. I was ready for hugs, for that boyish grin. Instead, I stepped into the hallway just in time to hear him murmur to his wife, "Honestly, the best gift would be if Mom just died." The world didn't crack. It collapsed, quietly, completely, inside my chest. I stood there, holding the cake like a bad joke. He didn't see me. His wife, Nora, shushed him, not in shock, but in that tired way people do when truth slips out at the wrong time. "Ethan, not today," she whispered. Not a denial, a scheduling conflict. "Happy birthday," I said, forcing my voice to work as I stepped in. He spun around, guilt flashing, then hardening into annoyance, like I was the one who had ruined a surprise. I set the cake on the counter, the candles melting into little yellow tears. If you click this, you already know the headline. A son wishing his mother would just disappear. But here's what you don't know. How a wish like that is forged, payment by payment, favor by favor, silence by silence, until love isn't love anymore. It is a ledger. You don't know how a family learns to breathe, only when you're not in the room. And you don't know what happens when the woman who has carried everyone finally puts the weight down. "Mom, we need to talk," Ethan said, like he was calling a meeting, not cutting a vein. About boundaries, about the house, about money. Of course. Money. It is always money at the bottom of a hurt like this. I smiled. "Perfect," I said. "Let's talk." Because if the best gift was my absence, I was ready to give it. Beautifully, completely, and on my terms. We sat down in Ethan's immaculate living room, the one I had helped fund when they bought this house. $50,000 from my savings, poured into a down payment like water into thirsty soil. At the time, I told myself it was an investment in family. Today, it felt like buying my own eviction notice. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like a corporate negotiator. "Mom, you've done a lot for us. Too much, maybe. But it's become suffocating." "Suffocating," I repeated. My voice cracked, half laugh, half wound. Nora jumped in. "What Ethan means is, you're always here, always involved. The kids, the bills, the little emergencies, we appreciate it, but it's not healthy anymore." Healthy. The word clanged against my ribs like an accusation. For decades, I had carried Ethan's health as if it were my own. The pneumonia when he was 4, $900 in hospital bills I worked triple shifts to pay. The braces when he was 13, $3,500 I pulled from a retirement account. His college tuition, $40,000, every penny mine. And now, this polished house, this perfect sofa where he sat like a stranger, existed because I had bent my back until it nearly broke. And still, suffocating. "Do you know what suffocation feels like?" I asked quietly. "It's lying in a hospital bed after surgery and realizing your son hasn't even called." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Silence was worse. Silence was agreement. The cake on the counter was drooping now, icing sliding in slow surrender. I thought of the birthdays when Ethan's eyes lit up at toy trucks and balloons, when he'd shout, "Best mom ever," with sticky hands around my neck. That little boy had grown into a man who measured me in dollars, not devotion. My heart trembled, but my spine straightened. "You said the best gift would be my death," I reminded him. "Let's make sure you understand what that really means." Ethan rubbed his temples like I was the one giving him a headache. "Mom, don't twist my words." "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did," I said flatly. "You meant every syllable." He glanced at Nora as if she might rescue him. She crossed her arms instead, silent but complicit. Her silence was worse than his cruelty. It meant this wasn't an impulsive outburst. It was a sentiment they had discussed, maybe even agreed on, behind closed doors. I leaned back into the sofa I had once helped them choose. "Do you remember when you and Nora first got engaged?" I asked. His eyes flickered. Annoyance, confusion. "You wanted the wedding of your dreams, and I gave it to you." $35,000. The ballroom, the champagne fountain, the flowers you insisted on flying in from California. And I told myself it was worth it, because you'd start your marriage debt-free, strong. Was that suffocating too? Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "That's not fair." "Oh, but it is," I cut in. "Fair is calculating. And I've done the math. Do you want to know what you cost me, Ethan? Because I can tell you down to the last cent." My voice had a steel edge now. Years of receipts, sacrifices, nights I worked while other mothers slept. They came pouring back like evidence in a trial. The down payment for this house, $50,000. The wedding, $35,000 tuition, $40,000. Medical bills, braces, every emergency, another $20,000 at least. That's $145,000 before we even talk about babysitting your children for free, covering your bills when David lost his job, and every birthday, every Christmas, where I never bought for myself because I was too busy making sure you had more. Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came. Nora looked down at her lap. "You wished me dead?" I whispered. "Well then, son, let's find out what my disappearance really looks like." The air in the living room went still, heavy as wet wool. Even the kids upstairs had gone quiet, their laughter replaced by an echo of my own heart pounding in my ears. Ethan stared at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into his home, not the woman who'd built it piece by piece. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said at last, his voice softer, but still defensive. "I'm just saying we need boundaries. Space. You've been too much, I repeated, tasting the words. "I gave you breath when you had none. I gave you a future when mine was slipping away. I was never too much, Ethan. I was enough." And then some. I rose slowly, my knees aching from years of double shifts, my hands trembling with a clarity that felt like fire. "You say my presence is suffocating, but it wasn't suffocating when I covered 8 months of your mortgage last year, was it? It wasn't suffocating when I bought your children's braces so their smiles could be perfect in every school photo." Nora shifted uncomfortably, her fingers fiddling with her wedding ring. We're grateful, Mrs. Carter." "Stop," I snapped. "Don't you dare call me Mrs. Carter like I'm some stranger on the street. I held your baby so you could sleep. I cooked dinners when you were sick. I showed up every time you needed me. And still, the two of you sit here and tell me the best gift would be for me to die?" Ethan's face drained of color. "Mom, please." "No. Please nothing. For 38 years, I've been your safety net. But every net frays when it stretched too thin. I picked up my purse, heavier now with the weight of a decision. "You've made your wish," I said quietly, "and I'm about to grant it." I walked toward the door, the smell of melting wax from the forgotten cake following me, like a ghost. Ethan stood up, panic flickering in his eyes. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said simply. "To think." "Mom, don't be dramatic." He tried to joke, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "We can talk about this later." "There's nothing dramatic about clarity," I replied, "and I've never been clearer in my life." As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit me like a baptism. For years, I had come to this house like a servant returning to her post. Today, for the first time, I was leaving as a woman reclaiming her power. Driving back to my small apartment, I could almost feel the decades of sacrifice pressing against my chest. The time Ethan got pneumonia at 4, and I sold my mother's jewelry for antibiotics. The weekends I spent working overtime to pay for his prom suit. The second mortgage I took to cover his tuition when he changed majors 3 times. The wedding I financed so he could have the one he wanted. the down payment on this very house, and the endless nights babysitting the twins for free so they could go out. In my kitchen, I set the cake on the counter and stared at it until the candles leaned like weary soldiers. My heart felt hollow, but inside that hollowness was something unexpected. A spark. I pulled out the old shoebox of receipts and bank statements I'd been keeping for decades. Each piece of paper was a sacrifice made in love, but now it felt like evidence. Evidence that I had been financing my own erasure. As I tallied the numbers, my pen trembled but didn't stop. $50,000 for the house, $35,000 for the wedding, $40,000 for college, $16,000 for mortgage payments, $4,000 for braces, thousands more in gifts, food, gas, over $460,000 in total. $500,000, half a lifetime, and all of it to hear that my death would be the best gift. $500,000, half a lifetime. The figures glared up at me from the kitchen table like a cruel joke. If I'd put that money into a savings account with compound interest, I could be living in a quiet coastal town or traveling Europe. Instead, I was sitting alone in a one-bedroom apartment, counting pennies, and being told my death would be a gift. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't a snap. It was a slow turning of gears that had been rusting for decades. The sadness drained away, leaving behind something sharper, steadier. Resolve. I reached for the phone and dialed Ethan. He answered on the third ring, already impatient. "What now, Mom?" "I just wanted to confirm what you said today," I asked quietly. "That your best gift would be if I died." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Mom, don't make it sound so harsh. I just meant, you're overwhelming. We need space." "Space is one thing," I said. "Wishing your mother dead is another." "Whatever. If you're going to guilt trip me, forget it." He hung up. I stared at the dead line for a long moment. Then I stood up, walked to the small desk where I kept my documents, and pulled out the folder marked Ethan and Nora. Bank papers, co-signing agreements, insurance policies. Every way I'd bound my life to theirs. First call, the bank, to close the joint account I'd set up for emergencies. $20,000 returned to my personal savings. The manager hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," I said. Second call, the mortgage office to request a full review of my rights as co-signer. David had lost his job again last week. They were vulnerable, and for once, so was I, in the way that grants power. If they wanted me gone, they would get their wish, but they would also learn what it means to live without me. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. My tiny apartment, usually cramped and dim, felt like a war room. On the table lay all the documents I had pulled out the night before: bank statements, co-signed agreements, life insurance policies, decades of sacrifice neatly stacked like ammunition. I dressed carefully, my nicest blouse, a crisp blazer. Not for vanity, for armor. Today I was not the desperate mother begging for crumbs of affection. I was a woman reclaiming her life. First stop, the bank. Mr. Richards, the branch manager, had known me for years. "Mrs. Carter, is everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Everything's perfect," I said, with a smile that felt like steel. "I'd like to close joint account number 2217 and transfer the full balance to my personal account." "That's $20,000, he said gently. "You know that account was set up for emergencies for your son and his family." "I know exactly what it was for," I interrupted, "and the emergency is over." He nodded, typed a few things, and handed me the paperwork. I signed with a steady hand. Seeing those funds back in my account gave me a surge of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Second stop, the mortgage office. Ms. Delgado, the loan officer, pulled up my file. "You co-signed their mortgage last year, correct?" 8 months of payments came from your account when they fell behind. That's right, I said. I'd like to understand my rights as cosigner, given their current instability. She frowned slightly. If the primary holders can't fulfill their obligations, you're within your rights to reclaim the property or force a sale. You already have evidence of their financial instability. Perfect. David's new job loss gave me the leverage I needed. Information they had shared casually now became my weapon. As I left the office, the sun was high, and for the first time in years I felt tall. They thought my disappearance would be painless, but they were about to learn the cost of erasing me. Third stop, my lawyer's office. Mr. Allen Pierce had been a friend of my late husband and had drafted my original will decades ago. When I walked into his office, he looked up in surprise. "Well, well, if it isn't my most devoted mother," he said warmly. "What brings you here today?" "I want to change everything," I said, sitting down with my folder. "My will, my life insurance beneficiaries, everything with Ethan's name on it. It's all going to charity." Allen raised his eyebrows. "That's a big decision." Has something happened? I told him everything. Every word Ethan had said, every sacrifice I had made. As I spoke, Allen's expression grew darker until finally he leaned back in his chair. "Julianne, I always admired your generosity, but this is cruelty. You're making the right call." For the next 2 hours, we went through every document. My $100,000 life insurance policy now listed a children's hospital and an orphan's foundation I had volunteered at in my spare time. My modest apartment and savings were placed into a trust fund for my grandchildren, but one they couldn't access until they turned 25. "I want them to learn independence before they see a dime of my money," I told Allen. "And the house?" he asked. "I want to prepare all the paperwork to reclaim it." As cosigner, I have that right. Their financial instability is already documented. Allen nodded. "We can have this ready within the week, but be sure you're ready for the fallout." "I'm ready," I said, and for the first time, it felt true. As I left Allen's office, the city glowed in the late afternoon sun. My steps felt lighter than they had in years. For decades, my identity had been Ethan's mother. Today, I was becoming myself again. If Ethan wanted me gone, then gone I would be, but on my own terms, and with every cord of dependency severed cleanly. That evening, back in my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine. A small act, but one that felt almost rebellious. For years, I'd denied myself little luxuries so Ethan and his family could live comfortably. Tonight, I toasted myself. The phone rang. Ethan's name lit up the screen. I let it buzz, unanswered. He called again. And again. Finally, I picked up. "Mom, listen," he started, his tone impatient, not apologetic. "We need you to watch the kids Friday night. Nora and I have a work dinner. It's important." The irony nearly made me laugh. Hours after wishing me dead, he was scheduling me like a babysitter. "I can't," I said simply. "What do you mean you can't?" His voice sharpened. "I have plans." "What plans could you possibly have?" he scoffed. "You're 70, Mom." I smiled to myself. "Plans that are none of your business." "Mom, don't be ridiculous. You always watch the kids. Since when do you say no?" "Since you told me that the best gift I could give you was my death," I replied coolly. "If you want me to disappear, Ethan, consider this the beginning." The silence that followed was delicious. Then came a laugh, sharp and mocking. "Oh, come on. You're really going to punish me over a joke?" "Grow up, Mom. It wasn't a joke." It was the clearest thing you've ever said to me. And I heard you. I ended the call before he could answer. For the first time in years, I felt no guilt, no panic about what he might think, just peace. Ethan had wished me gone, and I was finally giving him what he wanted. The next few days moved like a secret tide. Each morning, I checked off another item on my list, small steps in a quiet revolution. I withdrew $30,000 in cash from my personal savings and locked it in a small safe. This wasn't an escape born of desperation. It was an investment in freedom. I called the travel agency whose brochure I'd tucked away years earlier, when I still believed my retirement would be mine. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice steady. "I'm interested in your relocation program for retirees." "Switzerland." "Of course," the woman replied brightly. "We have a package departing next Tuesday, flexible stay." "Would you like the details?" "All of them," I said. "Send everything." When the email arrived, I read every line like a prayer. Beautiful apartments by the lake, social clubs for people my age, healthcare plans, German classes. I clicked book before doubt could creep in. $5,000. The most expensive, most selfish, and most intelligent purchase I'd ever made. That night, as I folded clothes into 2 suitcases, my neighbor, Marisol, knocked softly on the door. She'd seen me sacrifice everything for Ethan over the years. "You look different," she said as I poured her coffee. "I'm leaving," I told her. "Switzerland." Next week her eyes widened. "You're really doing it?" "Yes, but I need your help. When I go, I want Ethan to believe I've disappeared. I'll leave a letter with all the documents. You'll be the one to discover my empty apartment." Marisol smiled, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "Oh, honey, after what he's put you through, this will be the performance of my life." That night, I sat at my desk and began writing the most important letter of my life, the letter Ethan would find after I was gone. A love letter and a reckoning, all in one. I wrote late into the night, my pen gliding over page after page. Every word was deliberate, not rage-filled, but crystalline. "My dear Ethan," I began, "you asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from your life. When you read this letter, I will already be gone, starting the life I should have lived years ago instead of sacrificing it all for you. I documented everything, every penny I had spent on him, every sacrifice I had made. I wanted him to see, not just read, the weight of what he had dismissed as too much." Alongside the letter, I stacked all the legal documents, proof of the closed accounts, the change of my will, the cancellation of his health insurance, and my notice to the bank to exercise my rights as co-signer of the mortgage. It wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational one. "Your life will indeed be easier without me," I wrote, "but it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's worth it." When I finished, the letter was 22 pages long, meticulous, calm, and devastating. I sealed it in an envelope marked with his name. On Sunday morning, Marisol came over with fresh coffee and a knowing smile. "Ready for your grand escape?" she asked. "More than ready," I said, handing her the spare keys to my apartment. We had rehearsed everything. She would wait 2 days, then knock on my door, pretend to panic when I didn't answer, and use the emergency keys to discover my disappearance. She would deliver the letter to Ethan with wide eyes and a trembling voice. "Don't worry," she said, squeezing my hand. "I taught drama for 30 years. This will be my finest performance." At 6 a.m. Monday morning, a taxi pulled up outside. I stood at my door for one last moment, looking at the apartment where I had cried, planned, and sacrificed. It no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cell. "To the airport?" the driver asked as he loaded my suitcases. "To the airport," I confirmed. 2 simple words that marked the beginning of my new life. The taxi glided through streets I'd driven 1,000 times before, yet everything looked different, smaller, dimmer, like a place I'd already outgrown. For 40 minutes, I stared out the window, thinking of all the places I had postponed visiting because Ethan needed me. That list had been my life, but no more. At the airport, I moved like a ghost through security, my ticket to Zurich clutched in my hand. No one knew where I was going. No one could call me to beg for money or babysitting. For the first time in decades, I was truly unreachable. The flight was long, but strangely peaceful. No urgent texts. No calls, no emergencies that only I could solve. I ate my meal slowly, even savoring the bland airline wine. With each passing mile, I felt a little piece of my old self loosening and falling away. When we landed in Switzerland, a young man from the travel agency stood waiting with a sign bearing my name. "Mrs. Carter," he said warmly, "welcome to Zurich. I hope you're ready for a new adventure." "I am," I replied. And for the first time in weeks, my smile was real. He drove me to a small, furnished apartment in the city center. It had wide windows overlooking a park and, in the distance, the lake. "This is your home for the next month," he said, handing me the keys. "Here's a folder with everything you might need. Social groups, German classes, healthcare information, financial advisors. And tomorrow afternoon, you have an appointment with our retirement consultant." That night, I slept without my phone by my side. No vibrating notifications, no dread of requests. Just the sound of wind outside the window and my own breathing. In the morning, I walked to a cafe by the lake, bought fresh flowers for my new apartment, and spent $100 on a silk scarf simply because I liked it. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without guilt. I had vanished, and it felt like freedom. By Wednesday afternoon, the Swiss sun streamed into my little apartment as I sat by the window with a cup of coffee. According to the clock, it was 8 a.m. back home. Around that time, Marisol would be knocking on my door, calling my name, pretending to panic when I didn't answer. Then she'd find the letter and deliver it straight to Ethan. At 5 p.m. Zurich time, my phone started to vibrate. Ethan. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. Again. Finally, I answered, calm as the lake, outside my window. "Mom!" "Where are you?" "Marisol came to the house. She said you disappeared. She gave me a letter, but this is insane. What are you doing?" His voice cracked. Panic threaded through every word. "Did you read the letter?" I asked evenly. "Yes, I read it. All of it. Are you crazy? Closing accounts, changing your will, taking the house. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking of myself," I said. Something I should have done decades ago. "You can't just abandon us like this," he shouted. I almost laughed. "Funny. That's exactly what you asked me to do for my birthday gift, remember?" There was silence on the line. Then his voice softened. "I didn't mean it like that, Mom." I was just angry, stressed. "David lost his job again. The kids are difficult and so you wished me dead," I cut in. "Words have weight, Ethan. You can't take them back like loose change." His breathing hitched. "Please, Mom, don't do this. We need you. Do you need me or do you need my money?" I asked. Silence, the kind that tells the truth better than words ever could. "I need you," Ethan finally murmured, but his voice lacked conviction. It wasn't the voice of a son reaching for his mother. It was the voice of a man grasping at a lifeline. "For 38 years, Ethan," I said quietly, "I lived for you. Every penny, every hour, every decision, mine given up so yours could shine. And when I finally needed to feel your love, you told me your best gift would be my death. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild what's been burned," I said. "But maybe it's the first brick." "Just come back," he begged. "We'll fix this." "I promise I'll never say something like that again." Empty promises, I thought. They don't heal a wound this deep. "Do you know how many times I've been in the hospital in the last 5 years?" I asked. 3. "Do you know how many times you visited me?" He didn't answer. 0, I said. "Because my health was never a priority for you." "Only my checks were." "That's not fair," he whispered. "It's the truth," I said. and truth has been missing between us for a long time." The silence stretched again. This time I didn't rush to fill it. "I'm not coming back, Ethan," I said at last. "I'm finally living for myself. And it feels wonderful. Mom, please. I hope one day you teach your children what you couldn't show me, that love is respect, not exploitation. Until then, you'll have to stand on your own." I hung up before he could reply. My hands were steady. My heart was quiet. Outside my window, the lake shimmered silver in the afternoon sun. I was gone, and for the first time, I wasn't lost. The next morning, I turned on my phone to find 47 missed calls and 28 text messages. The tone of them shifted like a storm changing shape. "Please, Mom, answer. We're worried. If you don't pick up, we'll call the police." The bank called. "What did you do with the joint account? You're ruining us over nothing. Stop this drama." Not once did he write, "I love you. I'm sorry." Not once. Every word was soaked in panic about money, the house, his own comfort. I sent one reply, "I'm safe. I'm exactly where I need to be. Don't look for me." Within 5 minutes, his response lit up the screen. "You don't understand, Mom. You're going to ruin us. The mortgage lawyer said you can take the house. Please, don't do this." And there it was, the truth. Finally naked. It wasn't my absence that terrified him. It was the loss of my financial safety net. I put the phone down and let it buzz itself into silence. Then I slipped into a silk scarf I'd bought on a whim and walked along the lake. Each step felt lighter, as if years were falling off me like old skin. That afternoon, I met with the financial advisor the agency had arranged. A kind Swiss gentleman named Herr Müller reviewed my savings, pension, and new investments. "With what you have now, you can live here comfortably for the rest of your life," he said. "And if you invest wisely, in 5 years you may double your assets." Double my assets? I almost laughed at the irony. All those decades I poured money into Ethan's bottomless pit. And here, with one decision, I was being offered stability and growth. For once, the future felt like mine. Weeks passed in a blur of discovery. I joined a hiking group for retirees, signed up for watercolor classes, and even practiced my rusty French with a book club by the lake. My days were suddenly full, not of sacrifices, but of choices. My choices. Meanwhile, the messages from Ethan kept coming, at first desperate, then angry, and finally pathetic. "You've destroyed us, Mom. The bank is threatening foreclosure. David can't find work. The kids need school supplies. How can you abandon us?" Abandon. That word stung once, not anymore. I hadn't abandoned him. I had released him from the mother he used like an ATM, from the safety net he shredded with his ingratitude. One evening, Marisol called me, her voice full of wicked glee. "Ethan came by crying like a child," she said. "Begged me to help convince you to return." I told him some wounds never heal and some words can't be unsaid. I sat by my balcony overlooking the Alps and let the peace settle over me. Ethan's wish had come true. I had disappeared. But what he never understood was that in losing me, he hadn't gained freedom. He had lost the one person who had kept his world from falling apart. 6 months later, I received word. The bank had reclaimed the house. Ethan and Nora had moved into a cramped apartment. For the first time, they were living within their own means. And me? I was thriving. My savings had grown, my health was steady, my laughter had returned. At 72, I was living the life I should have lived all along. Ethan asked for the gift of my death. I gave him something far greater, the death of his dependents, and in that death, I was reborn.